ABC 10 News starts now with breaking news.
Find the defendant guilty.
That was the emotional reaction from the family of George Floyd after former officer Derek Chauvin was convicted on all 3 counts in his death. And moments later, inside the Minneapolis courtroom, Chauvin was handcuffed and taken into custody. Chauvin was found guilty of 2nd and 3rd degree murder and 2nd degree manslaughter. Meantime, people outside the courtroom cheered George Floyd's name.
George Floyd! George Floyd! George Floyd! George Floyd! George Floyd! George Floyd!
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Kimberly Hunt, and we begin our team coverage with Camila Bernal in Minneapolis.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional 2nd-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty.
After close to 10 hours of deliberations over just 2 days,
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, 3rd-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty.
the verdict is in.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, 2nd-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty.
The jury finding former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts.
I would not call today's verdict justice, however, because justice implies true restoration. But it is accountability.
George Floyd's brother stood inside the courtroom as the jury's verdict was read, while outside, protesters celebrating the victory. His girlfriend sharing her grief and her sense of relief.
It'll mean change. It's a first step in a long road to recovery.
Chauvin's bail was revoked, and he was led out of the courthouse in handcuffs. In Minneapolis, I'm Camila Bernal.
And let's go to ABC 10 News anchor Derek Stahl in the Live Center. He is tracking reaction to this verdict. Derek.
Well, thousands of Minnesota National Guard troops have been on standby, deployed in the city, ready for rioting and looting. But it's been an atmosphere of celebration on the streets of Minneapolis. Let's take a look at some live pictures if we can. Demonstrators have been cheering, chanting, dancing. Cars have been honking. Take a listen.
Yes!
That was just moments after the verdict was read. Demonstrators chanted all 3 counts. And at the spot where George Floyd was actually killed, somebody made it rain. They were tossing out dollar bills at George Floyd Square. Now, just after the verdict, President Joe Biden called George Floyd's family, and we have some of that audio. Take a listen.
You're an incredible family. I wish I were there just with my arms around you. I'm standing here with Cedric. We've been talking, we've been watching every second of this, and the Vice President, all of us, and we're all so relieved. Not just one verdict, all 3.
And Biden told the family, we are going to get a lot more done, including the George Floyd Policing Act. Vice President Kamala Harris was also on the call. She told the family they've been real leaders, and history will look back on this moment as an inflection point. Now, here in San Diego, a lot of local leaders have been reacting to the verdict. Mayor Todd Gloria put out a statement saying, in part, Derek Chauvin's actions were an abuse of power and a disservice to the men and women who nobly protect and serve our communities. And now he will be held accountable. The mayor also got on the police radio and addressed officers directly about 30 minutes ago, and we've got that for you.
So I want you to hear from me today. I know who you are. You are people who help complete strangers on the worst day in their life. You are people who believe in collaboration and community. You're people who put your lives on the line every single day to protect this city. I and the people of San Diego are grateful for your dedication and your service. With today's decision made, it is now time for all of us to come together to heal and to move forward.
Now, shortly after we learned that a verdict had been reached, the city of Los Angeles shut down its city-run vaccination sites in anticipation of large mass protests. Folks who had appointments up there will have them automatically rescheduled. We haven't heard of anything like that happening here in San Diego. For now, I'm Derek Stahl, ABC 10 News.
Thank you, Derek, and we will be checking back in. And joining us now live to discuss the verdict is attorney David Shapiro. David, thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
And this case was unique in several ways. The police chief testified for the prosecution. A defense witness made a point for the prosecution. But there was also that 9-minute video. It was a video that not only told the story, but added an emotional dimension. What role do you think that video played in that decision?
I think the video was the entire case. And I was thinking about this a short while ago. Where would we have been today? Would we have gotten this far to a trial? And certainly would this type of verdict been reached without cell phone cameras, without a body-worn camera? Because we wouldn't have had so much of the most incriminating evidence against former Officer Chauvin, but for a body-worn camera, but for cell phone video.
And we know there's been a lot of tension around the trial. The jury was diverse, and yet it didn't deliberate very long. It asked no questions, and it delivered a unanimous decision. What does that say about how justice works in our country?
Well, I mean, I think in this case, I think it was pretty clear what the jury needed to do, what the evidence and what the law called for them to do. And, you know, when we got into this morning, being Tuesday morning, the second day of deliberations without a note, and then we received word around lunchtime here in San Diego of a verdict, that did not bode well for the defense. You know, being a criminal defense attorney myself, a quick verdict on a case this serious without notes, it shows that that jury was in unison early and often, and it showed that way in their verdicts today.
And Derek Chauvin will be sentenced in 8 weeks. He's facing 40 years in prison. And this will be the judge's discretion. What do you expect?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Minnesota operates a lot differently than California. Minnesota has guidelines, and my understanding of the guideline range is somewhere in that 10 to 15-year range. That's sort of where we probably start off here. I expect, you know, the Attorney General's office, the prosecution, to be asking for significantly more based on a number of aggravating factors that we're going to hear about over time. I expect the defense probably to hope to come in around that 10-year range. You know, it's going to be very interesting. You know, this was a big step in the right direction for criminal justice reform, for law enforcement reform, but this case is not done. We still have sentencing, and there's a wide array of options that the judge will have at his disposal.
Speaking of those options, an appeal. What are your thoughts on the possibility of an appeal?
Well, I think without question, there's going to be an appeal. I think that there were certainly some appealable issues that have come up throughout the course of the trial, throughout the course of the last 10 months, throughout the course of the last couple of days, throughout the course of what we saw over the weekend with some public officials commenting about what they thought the jury should or should not do. In most criminal cases, after a conviction, there's going to be an appeal. I see no reason why this case should be any different. I would have been more concerned if he was only convicted of third-degree murder, because I'm not sure that conviction in and of itself would have withstood an appeal. But I think he's ultimately these convictions will probably be held true over time.
All right, David Shapiro, thank you for providing your legal perspective on this very profound legal case coming in today. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And coming up at 4:30, we will speak live with local pastor Glenn McKinney and get his reaction on today's verdict. Keep track of the latest in the wake of today's verdict with our ABC 10 News mobile app. There is a free version in the App Store. Just search 10 News.